Stop chasing what women say they want. Start developing what they actually respond to. There are three traits that create deep attraction in women, but they'll never openly tell you about them. Why? Because these traits operate below conscious awareness, triggering instinctive responses that bypass logical preference. Certain internal qualities create magnetic presence that draws people to you without effort. Today, I'm breaking down the three traits that secretly make men irresistible to women. These aren't the obvious things: looks, money, status. Those matter, but they're not what creates the deep, lasting attraction women feel towards certain men. These three traits operate at a psychological level that triggers something primal. Most men never develop these traits because they're chasing superficial advantages. The rare man who cultivates these becomes magnetic without trying. Let's get into it. Trait 1: comfortable silence and stillness. The first trait that secretly makes men attractive is the ability to be comfortable in silence and stillness without needing to fill space or prove anything. Most men are uncomfortable with silence. In conversations, they feel pressure to keep talking, to entertain, to fill every gap with words. In social settings, they need to be doing something, saying something, proving their presence matters. This constant motion and noise comes from internal discomfort with simply existing. But the man who can sit in comfortable silence, who doesn't feel compelled to fill every conversational gap, who can simply be present without performing, demonstrates something powerful: complete self-possession. That's why today's sponsor, Anson Belt and Buckle, exists to save great outfits from terrible belts. Most guys are still wearing stretched out leather with holes that either cut off circulation or hang loose like a sad afterthought. Anson's been family run since 2009, and they've completely changed how belts work. Instead of holes, they use a micro-adjustable track system with quarter-inch increments, so your belt fits perfectly every single time. You can mix and match any buckle with any strap, so one set gives you multiple looks without cluttering your closet. They're built to move with you too, sitting, standing, or running late. You'll always stay comfortable and sharp. With 40,000 plus 5-star reviews and a lifetime guarantee, these belts don't just look good, they last. Once you wear one, you'll never touch a regular belt again. Because Anson is sponsoring today's video. When you click the link in the description or scan the QR code to build a box set, you'll get 2 bonus pieces free. That's 3 buckles and 3 straps, giving you 9 unique belt combos in one box. Exclusive deal, perfect fit. Upgrade your belt game today. The Stoics practiced this deliberately. Marcus Aurelius wrote about the power of restraint and the strength found in not speaking when speech isn't necessary. Epictetus taught that wisdom often shows through what you don't say rather than what you do. When you're comfortable with silence, several things happen psychologically. First, you demonstrate you're not seeking validation through constant engagement. You don't need reactions or responses to feel okay about yourself. This self-sufficiency is deeply attractive. Second, silence creates space for others to fill. When you're not constantly talking, women have room to express themselves. They can think, process, share. Your silence gives them presence rather than competing for it. This makes them feel heard in ways that constant chatter never achieves. Third, comfortable silence suggests depth. People with nothing going on internally need constant external stimulation. People with rich internal lives can sit with themselves comfortably. When you display comfort with silence, it signals depth and self-awareness that creates intrigue. Fourth, stillness demonstrates emotional regulation. The ability to be calm and still, rather than constantly fidgeting, checking your phone, or seeking stimulation, shows you can regulate your nervous system. This creates feeling of safety around you that women respond to instinctively. In practical terms, this looks like not rushing to fill conversational pauses, sitting comfortably in your own presence during group settings without needing constant engagement, being able to enjoy activities quietly without commentary, listening more than speaking, thinking before responding rather than reacting immediately. The contrast this creates is powerful. Every other man in her life is performing, talking, seeking attention, filling space. You're calm, present, comfortable, just existing. This differentiation makes you stand out dramatically. Women often describe men with this quality as having presence or being grounded. They can't always articulate why these men are attractive, but they feel drawn to the calm, centered energy that comes from genuine comfort with silence and stillness. Most men never develop this trait because they're uncomfortable with themselves. Their internal dialogue is anxious or critical, so silence means being alone with thoughts they don't enjoy. They fill space externally to avoid facing what's happening internally. But the man who does the inner work, to actually like himself, to be comfortable with his own thoughts and presence, develops this magnetic stillness that doesn't need to prove anything. Women feel this and respond powerfully to it. Trait 2, selective vulnerability. The second trait that creates secret attraction is the ability to show vulnerability selectively and strategically rather than being either completely closed off or emotionally oversharing. Modern dating advice has created confusion about vulnerability. Men are told to be vulnerable to create connection, but what's actually attractive isn't constant emotional exposure. It's the rare strategic revelation of genuine feeling from a man who's otherwise composed. The Stoics weren't emotionless robots. They felt deeply, but they were selective about when and how they expressed emotion. Seneca wrote extensively about his grief and struggles, but in context of broader wisdom and control, the emotion was real, but it was shared purposefully. Here's what makes selective vulnerability attractive. It demonstrates strength combined with humanity. You're not a stone wall incapable of feeling, but you're also not an emotional reactor who shares every feeling with everyone. You're strong enough to feel, but controlled enough to choose when to share. This creates several powerful effects. First, when you do share something vulnerable, it carries weight because it's rare. The woman who receives your vulnerability feels special because you don't give it to everyone. It feels like intimacy rather than emotional dumping. Second, selective vulnerability demonstrates emotional intelligence. You understand which emotions serve conversation and which don't. You share feelings that create connection rather than burden. You're strategic about emotional expression rather than being controlled by emotions. Third, the contrast between your usual composure and occasional vulnerability creates depth. She sees you handle most things with strength, so when you reveal something deeper, it humanizes you without diminishing the strength she's already observed. Fourth, selective vulnerability invites reciprocal vulnerability without demanding it. When you share something genuine at the right moment, it creates safe space for her to do the same. You're leading emotional depth rather than forcing it. The key word is selective. This isn't about trauma dumping on first dates. It's not about sharing every insecurity or fear. It's not about making her manage your emotional state. It's about occasionally, in moments of genuine connection, revealing something true about your internal experience that adds depth without creating burden. Practically, this looks like maintaining composed strength as your default, while occasionally sharing a genuine fear about something that matters, expressing appreciation or affection clearly when truly felt rather than constantly or never. Acknowledging difficulty with something while maintaining confidence in handling it. Sharing a meaningful past experience when it adds context to present conversation. The timing matters enormously. Selective vulnerability works after you've demonstrated strength. If you lead with vulnerability, it reads as weakness. If you show strength first, then occasionally reveal humanity, it reads as depth. Women describe men with this quality as having layers or being complex. They're attracted to the discovery process of finding depth beneath the composed exterior. The mystery of what else is beneath creates ongoing interest. Most men fail at this in one of two ways. Either they're completely closed off emotionally, which prevents deep connection, or they're emotionally incontinent, sharing everything with everyone, which creates burden rather than intimacy. Both extremes fail. The rare man who can be generally composed and strong while occasionally sharing genuine vulnerability in appropriate context creates the perfect balance. He's strong enough to be safe, but human enough to connect with. This combination is incredibly attractive because it's incredibly rare. Ancient trait 3, principled indifference to outcomes. The third trait that secretly makes men magnetic is genuine indifference to specific outcomes combined with strong principles about how you engage with life. This sounds paradoxical, but it's the essence of Stoic philosophy. Care deeply about your actions and character, while being indifferent to outcomes you can't control. This creates a powerful combination of investment and detachment that's deeply attractive. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." The Stoics invested everything in their choices, their virtue, their character, but they remained indifferent to whether those efforts produced desired outcomes. Applied to attraction and relationships, this means you invest in being your best self, in treating people well, in living according to your values. But you're genuinely indifferent to whether any specific woman chooses you, approves of you, or wants to be with you. This principled indifference creates attraction through several mechanisms. First, it demonstrates abundance mentality without arrogance. You're not indifferent because you don't care about anything. You're indifferent because you're focused on what you control rather than what you don't. Second, it eliminates neediness completely. The man who genuinely doesn't need specific outcomes, doesn't chase, doesn't try too hard, doesn't compromise his principles for approval. This absence of need is magnetic because neediness is universally repulsive. Third, it maintains your frame regardless of her responses. She can be interested or not, available or not responsive or not. Your behavior and energy stay consistent because they're based on your principles rather than her reactions. Fourth, it creates safety. Women can be themselves around you because your behavior isn't contingent on their responses. They don't have to manage your emotions or perform to keep your interest. Your stability is internal rather than dependent on external validation. The principled part is critical. This isn't nihilistic indifference where nothing matters. It's specific indifference to outcomes you don't control while caring deeply about how you show up. You care about being honest, respectful, authentic, strong, but you don't care whether caring about these things wins any specific person. Practically, this manifests as approaching women you're interested in without attachment to specific responses, being yourself completely without adjusting based on whether she seems impressed, walking away from situations that don't align with your values, regardless of how attractive she is, maintaining standards and boundaries even if it means losing options. The paradox is that this indifference to whether she chooses you often makes her want to be chosen by you. Humans want what doesn't need them. The man who's genuinely fine either way becomes more attractive than the man desperately trying to win approval. Women experience this as he knows his worth or he doesn't chase. What they're actually experiencing is someone who's invested in his own character and choices while being detached from whether those choices win external approval. Most men struggle with this because they're outcome dependent. Their behavior changes based on whether she seems interested. They compromise principles to maintain options. They need external validation to feel okay about themselves. This need bleeds through everything they do, killing attraction. But the rare man who genuinely lives by principles, while being indifferent to whether those principles win approval, creates magnetic presence. He's the same person whether she's interested or not, whether she stays or leaves, whether she approves or doesn't. This consistency based on internal values rather than external responses is incredibly powerful. The Stoic practice is daily. Focus on what you control. Accept what you don't. Control your effort, your character, your choices. Don't control outcomes, responses, other people's feelings. This practice, internalized over time, creates the principled indifference that makes men irresistibly attractive. Start with one. If you're constantly filling space with noise, practice being comfortable in silence. If you're either emotionally closed or constantly oversharing, develop selective vulnerability. If you're attached to outcomes and approval, cultivate principled indifference through Stoic practice. These aren't tricks or techniques. They're qualities that emerge from genuine self-development. Do the inner work to be comfortable with yourself. Develop emotional intelligence and regulation. Live according to principles rather than seeking outcomes. When you develop these traits authentically, attraction becomes effortless. You're not trying to be attractive, you're simply being yourself. And that self has been cultivated to embody qualities that trigger deep psychological responses in others. The Stoics knew this 2,000 years ago. Most modern men still haven't learned it. Be the exception.